All right, everybody good and coffeeed up? Good. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Senator Rodney. I represent Michigan City, Chesterton, Portage, and basically everything in North Porter County, Northwest Porter County. I have my brand new counterpart over here. I'll let him introduce himself.
My name's Randy Novak. I took over. I'm the new pet boy. I knew you could tell. But I represent the northern part of LaPorte County into Porter County, east side of Chesterton and down there. So that's House District 9 is what my new position is. So
Randy's he's actually my state rep, so that's my boss. Either way, I want to thank you guys for coming out. It's Saturday, it's beautiful. You guys probably got leaves that you want to get taken care of in your yard. Stuff picked up. But it's a very, very important. It's a very important topic that we are hearing more and more about. It's getting to be crunch time right now. We'll talk about kind of like what the timeline is, with the potential for calling a special session for everybody's favorite topic right now, redistricting. So, if you're taking a look up here right now, this is the map as we see it right now. Yes?
I know you don't want to get behind the podium, but could you make sure you speak up?
Yes. Yeah. Is this, oh, that's actually on. Oh, okay. I didn't think we had mics today. I'll do my best to speak into the mic. A lot of times I will speak very, very quickly, particularly if I have coffee. But yeah. So either way, as you guys can see, this is the map of Indiana. This is the map the way that it currently is. We don't necessarily know what the map could be if they redistrict. So to kind of just, bird's eye view, what is redistricting? What is the process of redistricting? When is it typically done? So redistricting is essentially, for what we're talking about, is the congressional maps. The way that the congressional leaders are in our state, they're divided up by territory. Those decisions are made on a state-by-state basis, so every state will make the determination as to how they are going to select the maps, or how they're going to draw the maps for their congressional leaders. In the state of Indiana, we leave it to the legislature. A lot of states have what they would call, the partisan decision. Who gets to make that decision? Those that are in power. A lot of the states right now are having this vigorous debate that began really about 6 months ago. That was right about the time we were getting out of session. It was right about the time that the Trump administration was coming, really kind of getting into full swing. They were about 3 months into their term, and you started hearing, these rumblings about, well, we need more seats. We want more seats going in, into the midterm elections. And that was kind of the first time it's ever really been discussed, with any administration. The idea that we're going to go ahead and we're going to seek to redraw the maps in a way that's more favorable to keep the party that's in power. Because typically we do these every 10 years after the census. So we do this, as you guys may recall, we do the census every 10 years, basically on the 10th year. So the 2010 we did one, 2020 we did one, we'll do one in 2030. That's typically when you take a look and you say, how has the population changed? Because we got fresh data. And we want to make sure that everybody's represented as best as possible. So they'll say, okay, well, a bunch of people moved out of District 2 and they moved over to District 3, or they moved down to District 7. So we need to redraw these maps because now the people that are in District 2 have really too much power per voter, as opposed to the District 7 that has now got a bunch of voters and only still one representative. That's not what we're talking about here, and that's not been the conversation at all. What you're not hearing is, well, the populations have changed so much, so we need to change the maps. What you're hearing is a lot of very, very, partisan talk about why, and a lot of these are kind of like day by day, where you'll hear, well, this is a new reason, this is a new reason. But let's cut back to about 6 months ago, and just being frank here. The conversation was, we need more seats. And that was from the Trump administration. We need more seats going into redistricting. And that has the ire of both Democrats and Republicans. Basically what that is, it's really upending what we have always consistently looked at as a 10-year period for which we will do redistricting. So, one of my favorite things to kind of point out with the map, the way that they're drawn right now is, one of the main concepts of redistricting is you want to draw people within a community to have a single voice. Meaning people that know each other, they work together, they are part of what is a region. And we're up in Northwest Indiana, we're called the region for a reason. I mean, we are different up here. We are on Central Time Zone. We all, watch Chicago news. We don't really get channels that are really indicative of what's happening in Indianapolis, unfortunately. But, when we turn on 2, 5, and 7, you're going to get Chicago news. You're going to get Chicago sports. You're going to listen to Chicago radio. That's the market that we're in. If you look at District 2, what is that? South Bend. That's your South Bend, your South Bend media market. You figure out what's going on there. Those are people that probably work at the same industries. We're we're steel mills. We're the coast as far as industry. A lot of tourism up here. Like a lot of us work all together. I mean, how many people grew up in a steel family? Yeah. A lot of times, you say steel and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about because their grandparents came here for the jobs here in steel. If you look at Indianapolis, that's one tiny little district, and that's where there's a lot of people there that represent that community. They all have the very same interests. You've got Evansville, you've got Fort Wayne. Those are your markets. Those are your media markets. The way that they're drawn right now, that is what we've been told as of like 4 years ago. These are fair maps. This is representative of communities. I wish I had a map here to show you what is potentially going to be proposed. What are the maps that are going to be proposed? But we don't know those. That's an idea. So you guys have some maps that that we've seen that have circulated. Nobody knows if those are actually the maps. Nobody knows if those are going to be specifically the communities that are going to be included. That's the problem. And that's why a lot of people are getting very upset. And that is across the political spectrum. Right now, I mean, obviously, has any of you ever had raise your hand if you've ever talked to Congressman Mervan? You've seen him? Yeah. He's very active. I have no idea what your guys' political affiliation is, and that doesn't matter. The idea is that you have a connection to your congressman. You develop a relationship with your congressman. You've met him, you know who he is, you know what he stands for. People that are in the rest of the state, a lot of them are upset because they're going, I have a connection with my congressman. He's a Republican that I like. I'm a Republican and I want to keep him. Now you're telling me I'm not even going to know who my next person is, and it's not even time to redistrict. A lot of people don't feel very comfortable with that, and for good reason. It's nothing we've ever seen before. So what's next? And Randy, I don't mean to talk.
You're doing great.
If you want to jump in at any time, I know that I got a microphone, but please push me aside.
So just so everybody knows, this is my 4th day on the job.
Randy's a very, very smart man. I've seen him work, and 4th day or not, he's going to jump in right into the fire. I know he is. What's next is we would essentially be called into special session by the governor. That is a power that only the governor has, and the governor can do so for specific reasons. Typically, it has to be an emergency. A lot of times it's debatable as to whether things are not an emergency, but he can call a special session and tell us to redraw these maps. As you have been paying attention in the news, there is conversations about whether or not the votes are there. And I can tell you the conversations that I've had, there are a lot of people that are not happy about this prospect. A lot of people are saying, that are on the other side of the aisle, are saying, we don't think that this is right. Some of the quotes that I've seen out there talk about, I teach my kids not to cheat. I teach my kids, you play by the rules. If you want to win, you put your best foot forward and you win. You don't change the rules in the middle of the game because you feel like that's what that's going to be best for you, and that's the only way that you can get there. That's essentially, it's how it's always been. Those midterms for as soon as a new president gets in, those midterms are usually tough because you have 2 years to demonstrate that you're going to be able to enact your policies, that you're going to be able to unite, not just your party, but you're going to be able to unite your people. You're going to be able to unite the people, and you're going to be able to demonstrate and follow through on those promises. It's tough. Usually those administrations kind of take a bath. We all remember 2008. President Obama came in 2010. You had a Tea Party movement that really just, took a chunk out of his support. And so that's kind of how it goes. But you have to build back from that. You have to continue to, demonstrate what you're going to do is going to be, best. You're going to be the person that's putting the best policies forward. So, if we get called into special session, what happens? Well, what would happen is there would be essentially legislation that would be brought forward that would have to go through the same process as any other piece of legislation, meaning it would have to go through a committee, it would have to go to the floor for second reading, it would have to go to the floor for first reading in whichever chamber that it was in. It starts in one of them. It'll likely start in the House if I had to guess. Then it has to go over to the other side. And there could be amendments, there could be, there's going to be a lot of discussion, there's going to be a lot of, questioning, there's going to be a lot of policy, policy points that are going to be made. It'll go over to the other side of the Indiana legislature, to the Senate chamber, and it'll go through the exact same process. If there's any changes that are made to the legislature of the map, then there's going to have to be conference committee, and it'll have to be passed, through both houses. So
How long does all that take?
that could take. There's specific periods for which within the rules that if it passes a committee, it's got to be 24 hours before it takes a vote in the next process. So it would have to go to a day for committee, a day for second reading, a day for third reading, and then come back into the House or into the Senate, so then it would have to go through the process again. You're talking probably over a 2-week period, because they could suspend the rules. That would be, I think that right now a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the fact that we're going through this process. I think the idea of also suspending the rules to really, really cram it through, I think that's if I had to guess, I would guess that that's probably a hill too high to climb for a lot of people. So that's kind of essentially the process that it would go through. Now, if we have the 2026 primaries that are coming up, the filing deadlines that are coming up, and we have session that's coming up. And what you're not going to see is that if we get past December, or if we get into December and this has not been called, it's not going to be able to be called. So right now we're on this very, very tight window between now and pretty much end of November that you're going to see a decision made or not. And every day, our media staff, our staff, they are paying very, very close attention to what is coming in. What is being said by individuals, senators and representatives, about whether or not they support or they don't support. Because people have come out and publicly said, yes, I support this, no, I don't support this. And we're counting those numbers, and we're just hoping that people will stay strong and will follow the process that we always have. So, anything you want to say, Randy?
The only thing I want to echo is Rodney mentioned, I'm hearing all kinds of different things, and I hear it from both sides of the aisle. But the thing is and I've heard that the governor wants it in one day, wants us all just push through and get it done. And obviously, there's a lot of opposition to that because there's still, regardless of what everybody thinks, there's very good people on both sides. So I just hope that they have the backbone to stand up to the president, because they are putting an awful lot of pressure. Vance has been here twice. I think the president just did a conference call when they had a caucus here as recently as the last couple of weeks. And there's a lot of threats and a lot of pressure being put on members to deliver this to the president. And is what I'm hearing, and he's got more of a handle on it than I do, but that the governor is obviously very beholden to Washington, and he wants to deliver for Washington, so he may call us all in to say, I did everything I could. I did what I was supposed to do, and leave it up to the members of the legislature to make a decision. And there's a lot of people, obviously, on both sides that don't want that to happen. But the other thing, and correct me if you heard something different, but every day that we're called in, it's a cost of like $65,000 to $70,000 a day to do this. So at a time when the federal government shut down and everything's happening and we're looking at programs being cut from the feds, it's like, is this really the highest priority and the best way we can spend our money down there? So with that, I turn it back over to...
Sure. So we're going to open up here in a little bit to a conversation with you guys. Obviously, this is a town hall we want to hear from you as well. And one thing that I want to make sure is, I'm a Democrat, Randy's a Democrat. We represent all of you. This is a very, very, this is an open discussion, and you guys can feel free to say whatever you want. This is not a political rally. This is an open discussion. If you disagree with somebody out there, doesn't matter what they say. Please be respectful. Let them speak. We're not going to boo over anybody. We're not going to hiss and throw tomatoes or whatever else. We're going to be as respectful as possible. That's all I ask of you guys. It's very, very important because this is, again, it's a very, very hot topic. And, the point of this is not for us to tell you what we think. We'll tell you what, currently what we're thinking. But it's for us to listen to you as well. And we want to make sure that you may say something that is incredibly profound that will be amplified because of that. And that happens a lot. Legislation has come out of these discussions and out of these get-togethers that has really kind of changed the landscape of what happens in the rest of the state. We had the life ring bill that came from an event that we were at Nancy's house, and that all came. Those life rings that were out there came from a simple conversation. So please, feel free to say what you need to be or what you need to, but just all I ask is just be respectful. I will say this, on that note, obviously, as you can probably tell, I'm not for this. And I'm not for this for any reason. They could draw the maps in a way that gave Democrats 2 extra seats. I would still vote against it. I stand against it because it's the process. I mean, we do this every 10 years about the population. We don't do this because somebody out there says, I want more. And I want to make sure that I hold on to power. That's my position against it. My argument to my friends across the other side of the aisle that see this as this is, right now we're on the chopping block. It's only a matter of time before you are on the chopping block. This isn't, because essentially what we're looking at is this is the process. If, you had individuals that maybe eventually said, I don't like what's going on and I want to stand against this. My question is then in 2 years, are we going to see another redistricting where that individual that did stand up, even against his own party, is now going to be redistricted out? I mean, essentially that's what we're opening up the gates for, if that's what happens. And that's not a, the sky is falling argument. That's very really what's happening right now. So either way, I want to open it up to you guys. Again, I really appreciate you guys' time coming out. So if you guys have any particular questions, love to hear them.
Okay.
Yeah.
When Texas went through this, the Republicans had their special session, did their redistricting. The Democrats forced left and forced that they didn't have quorum to call the session. What options does Indiana have for doing?
So the question, if you guys couldn't hear, and I was told earlier, I forgot to mention this before we start asking questions. There's actually a microphone up in the corner. So if you do have questions, you don't have to. I'm gonna go ahead and repeat your question so people can hear it back there. But if you do have a question, and if you can, we'd appreciate to be able to go up there so everybody can hear your question.
Breaking the rules, why can't we break them?
So, the question was, earlier this year we saw redistricting being proposed by Governor Abbott in Texas. And as a result, you saw the Texas Democrats left the state. This is a tactic that's often used, when there is legislation that's very, very controversial, and you'll see legislators leave the state. It happened in 2012 here in the state of Indiana. Back then, you had, the legislation that was being proposed was the right to work legislation, which essentially was the labor unions in the state of Indiana very much opposed. And the legislators in our state left, and somewhat, I believe, Illinois and Wisconsin, and the process of that is if you leave the state, you can't be called in for, you're not going to be able to go to session, and they won't have a quorum if the numbers are there to do that. So in our state, we have 100 state senators and 50. Sorry, 150. Yeah, I looked at him and said, so 100 representatives and 50 state senators. And in order to have quorum, you've got to have, I believe in the Senate, you have to have 33. In the House, you have to have 70. Was it? No, 67, not 77. So you have to have quorum in order to do that. Right now, there is a supermajority in both parties, meaning they have more than quorum in one party. So they
don't need us to
Exactly.
session.
Exactly. So if we left the state and said, they'd say, we don't need you. Now you just don't have a voice. Now essentially now if you opposed it, you don't even get to say why you oppose it. So that's not something that we have the ability to do. There's only out of the Senate right now, there's 10 Democrats to 40 Republicans, and you've got 30 Democrats in the House to 70 Republicans. So that's not an option that we have. I'm not even necessarily sure if it's something that we would actually do, but I mean that's a tactic that has been used. And in Texas, at one point there was talks of actually sending law enforcement out to go and wrangle these folks and bring them back to Texas so they would be in the chamber for the discussion. So that's not something that we can do in the state, but.
Thank you, Senator. I've got a really loud voice.
Okay.
Probably people can hear me. I'm Julia Vaughn with Common Cause Indiana, and we've been helping to organize the pushback against mid-cycle redistricting. So thank you so much for providing this opportunity for people to learn. I just wanted to give folks some suggestions as to how you can make your voice heard. Call the governor's office. His number is 317-232-4567. You'll get an answering machine, but eventually, it will connect. Just leave your name, your address, and tell them you're opposed to mid-cycle redistricting. And those courageous Republicans who have said they're opposed to this, they need some backup because they're going to be beat up. The Republicans from Washington, D.C. are already saying we're going to make things very difficult for any Republican who doesn't go along with this. So thank Senator Gray, the president pro tem. He's the one who announced on Thursday that they don't have the votes to move forward. So let him know you appreciate his listening to the people. Because just earlier this week, my organization, along with several others, delivered an additional 10,000 petition signatures to the governor, to the legislative leadership against this. We've delivered now a total of 20,000 communications from Hoosiers opposed to this. And last but not least, those folks in this area, like Senator Bolachek, who hasn't come out whether he's opposed or for this, ask him what his position is, because you all are his constituents and you deserve to know. So just a few suggestions. I mean, right now, believe it or not, citizens actually do have the upper hand on this, but Trump is not giving up. So we've got to continue to supporting those people who have said they oppose this, telling Governor Braun, listen to the people. Don't just listen to the Trump administration. Listen to Hoosiers. We have other priorities. And then those people who haven't taken a stand, ask them where they are. So thank you very much.
Was it Julia?
Julia.
Julia. One very good point, and I very much appreciate you bringing something to my attention. You guys got a handout, and on the back we have the numbers and contact information for both for the governor, for President Bray, Senate Pro Tem President Bray, and then the Speaker of the House, Todd Houston. So if you are interested in making your voice known about your stuff, whatever your position is, that's how you would be able to do so. And I want to thank Molly. Molly's in the back. Molly is one of our comms folks in the Senate and has done a fantastic job. I'm fortunate enough that I will say this: being from Northwest Indiana, it's often hard to get people from Northwest Indiana down to Indianapolis. I have Molly as my comms person who is actually from right down the road over here. So having somebody from the region, born and raised here, from a family that's been here for a very long time, is incredibly, really, really beneficial because you have somebody that knows the area. So, to your other point about the people, right? One of the things that I did not mention was that there's been all kinds of statewide polls that have been done by independent pollsters, and the majority, over 60% of people, do not want this. If you think about that, 60% of the people against 40% of the people, that's actually flipped of what the political makeup of the state is. So there are actually a lot of Republicans that are making up that gap, because it's about 60-40. If you look at most elections for the top races, governor's race is usually around 40 to 45% Dem, 60 to 55% R. So that tells you quite a bit about where people are on this issue. We do have a gentleman I see standing up in the back up here.
Yeah, just like to have a question and a comment. First, when you started, the whole districting was about numbers of people, not numbers of Democrats, number of Republicans, number of independents. And it makes you wonder, how do they know that Mike Vinson pulled a Republican ticket?
They know.
Because I went in the primaries and I scanned my ID and they give me a Republican ticket, and then you add, so now they have that data, they have my address, they know where I live. If we pulled that out of the voting system, that would remove that data. And another reason why they know that Northwest Indiana votes highly Democrat is because you go in and you punch 10 or you punch whatever. I'm punching for all of the Democratic people. If you took that away, then you remove the data. The redistricting then is a guesswork. If the Republicans, or in 2 years, if the Democrats want to come in and do redistricting, they've lost the data. They don't know who a Democrat or a Republican is, and they don't know what area votes primarily with the punch 10 or the entire. So I think if we want to keep doing this every 2 years, fine, keep it the way it is. But we have to look at some way to remove that data so whoever's in charge doesn't have that data and leave it to guesswork for them, or just do it the right way and go by population of areas.
Fortunately,
Yeah, that's a great point.
I like it.
So, here, do you want to go ahead and make?
I love the idea, but unfortunately, the ones in control aren't going to relinquish straight, because the Republicans are using the straight party voting considerable in this last election, and when they're in charge, they're not going to. This is my take on it. They're not going to give up anything when it comes to with numbers.
Would the other side, if they were in charge, would they do the right thing?
I would think we get there. I would hope. I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
So no, I think I would absolutely support that. So it should be based on the number of people that vote in that area, and not your political affiliation. Obviously, the Republicans, the party that's in charge right now, knows what the voting records are, and they know.
Sure.
They wouldn't.
Now, you just made me ask another question. Is it the population of people living, or is it the population of people voting that is drawing these districts?
Right.
It is the population of people living. So the way that it's typically drawn is they go by, what the population density is. So that's thus the census. If there was population of people voting, you can get that information at any point. Election to election. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Turnout is typically very bad. And so the maps would probably be drawn very, very different if you looked at what actual population is. If we drew it only on the population of people voting. One of the other things you brought up was straight ticket voting. And, the discussion you and Representative Novak here were having was about whether or not if the Democrats would do the right thing if they were in power. And I like to be as brutally honest as possible. The Democrats kind of screwed up about straight ticket voting in particular. I credit where credit's due and criticism where criticism's due. And I criticize my own party all the time. In 2010, there was discussions that Democrats wanted to, or that Republicans wanted to get rid of straight ticket voting in 2010, and right around the time of the Obama presidency. Democrats really should have listened at that point, because there was, at that point, you had the numbers were in the House were like 52-48. Something around there. Every election cycle was something around there. And the Democrats, they just kind of scoffed at it, said, well, maybe, you had some that supported it and some that didn't, and it didn't go anywhere. But I do think the elimination of straight ticket voting would represent communities so much better. I think you would have a lot better, honest conversation about what people's policies were. I think you would really put people to the test, because you're going through and you're having to pick every individual, and it's not just as easy as, well, I'm just a Democrat, so I just vote Democrat. Because I can tell you, in this last election that I was in 2022, there was one race in particular where I saw somebody who was it was basically the deputy in the office that was going to be taken over for somebody who was, you know, probably one of the most celebrated elected officials in that position, and had been, you know, her as the predecessor. This person supported the candidate. They thought this person was the best. That person worked their tail off. I've never seen somebody work so hard in an election, and she ran against somebody who on the other side was a challenger who had been removed from her office or a different office, didn't put a single yard sign in the yard, didn't really do anything, and that person got elected over the person that was really hands down, just way more qualified. And I mean, and this is a very apolitical office. This isn't me up here going, oh, this person lost because they were a D or an R. It was one of those situations where you just go, straight ticket voting is killing us. I mean, we're losing good people to the political process in these partisan races because simply just they decide to put a specific letter behind their name. I think it's a tragedy because at that point people aren't really picking for, you know, whether or not they agree with their policies. They may not even have any policies, but they just put the right letter behind their name.
I'd like to make one more comment about personal bias too. I mean, we're talking as a district in a state. I mean, it even goes down to personal biases that people have. As a Republican in a Democratic area, I've raised my hand several times wanting to help, but because I'm known as a Republican, my emails get deleted, my calls don't get answered, and there's some folks in this room that can look in the mirror and ask, is that me?
Okay, that's a fair point.
How likely, or have there been any discussions, and how likely is it that Indiana could go to a ranked choice voting to get a more representative website?
So the question was about ranked choice voting, and essentially with ranked choice voting, you're kind of getting rid of the primary process, or the traditional primary process, and you are basically saying, okay, there are 6 candidates for this position. You're going to rank them, and it's going to be weighted based on how much you like that person. So your top vote, they're going to get the most points. The second person, and it gets rid of the idea where you pick R versus D, you know.
Illinois like that, don't they?
No, Illinois is not like that. New York City, I think, changed to ranked choice voting. Alaska has ranked choice voting. Alaska really likes ranked choice voting. It is a big change people have a hard time adjusting to change, understandably. I like ranked choice voting. I really, truly do. I think that, I think you would see, I think probably who feels that, the extremes are, sucking up all the oxygen out of the room, and it is very, very hard to have, civil political discourse because of what's happening on the far ends of this political spectrum. I mean, see a show of hands on that. I feel like that is one of the most common things. People just, to the extent that, families don't talk to each other, to the extent that people can't have conversations, to the extent that if people don't even want to say sometimes what they really, truly feel about a situation because of the way they may be perceived by their peers. That's never how it was. I mean, I'm not that old, but I know that that's not how it's always been. I think about this, and it's something that I've always been interested in politics, but I never have seen it to this extent. And so the idea that, with ranked choice voting, you would be able to say, you know what, okay, this is my top choice, but I kind of like what this other person is saying. And it doesn't have to be, well, I just pulled R or I just pulled D, and that's the way that it goes. So, I mean, but to the specific question was whether or not there's an appetite for it. It's something that has been discussed. One of the senators that was on the other side of the aisle that I would talk to all the time about this, John Ford, I think it was John Ford, I'm pretty sure. It's been a couple of years, but he's since left the legislature, and that discussion has kind of died down. But I do think that there is an appetite on both sides of the aisle for moving away from the political discourse that we have currently. And I think that is probably one of the best ways that you could do so.
What impact, if any, do you expect? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
What impact, if any, do you expect the Prop 50 vote to have on Indiana?
The Prop 50 vote
In California.
I mean, right now, if you look at like the statements that have come out by the individuals that are saying I'm for redistricting, every single one of them talks about other states, and that to me is that's the smoke in the mirrors. Why are we talking about other states? We're the state of Indiana. Like, we're talking about our people. We're talking about our lines. I don't understand why, we have to have a conversation about what's happening elsewhere. And I think one of the things that I heard out there was, well, we didn't ask for this fight. And I'm sitting here going, nobody was talking about this until President Trump said, I need to find more seats. Like, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. And as soon as that happened, then there was the reaction. And that's kind of like how it is. There's the reaction, or there's the action, and then there's the reaction. And I don't ever remember, and if somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember California ever talking about redistricting until we had the discussion about Trump saying we need to go find more seats.
But do you think the decision there will affect our legislators in one way or another?
So that goes to the polls on Election Day this year, November 4th or November 5th. And so I think that I do think that could potentially end up upending where we're at right now. And we've seen North Carolina has kind of fallen. Obviously we had Texas, and there's one other state. What was the other state?
Virginia's talking about it now.
Virginia's talking about it. Missouri, that's what it was, Missouri. So if I'm looking into my crystal ball, I think that if that happens, if California goes, I think it's a foregone conclusion, because I think at that point the pressure is going to get really amped up. Then we really have to do it because they're doing it. And I think that's, to me, that's the, I would call it, as an attorney, I'd call it the invited heir. You've set the table, you've done something, obviously the other side's going to react, and then that becomes now the justification is the reaction. And it totally ignores the initial action. So, you've been standing up there with the microphone. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Don Briggs. I'm precinct chair here in Michigan City, Democratic precinct chair down precinct 5. So yes, I'm a Democrat. But I'd like to bring up a conversation I had with the former mayor of LaPorte, Lee Morris. I met him through his Better Government Study group a couple of years ago. By the way, in a conversation, he and I agreed that he's old enough to be my father. This guy is a Republican, and he has championed independent redistricting. And I'm sure Julia knows much more about this than I do. I'd like to just bring that to the fore, okay? Another thing, redistricting, maybe we could take this to the next level, or at least threaten to take it to the next level. Back in the day in the Civil War, West Virginia, several counties in what is now West Virginia broke away from Virginia. And recently, the Republican legislature had entertained the notion of bringing in several counties from Illinois, downstate Illinois, into Indiana. We could make a counter threat, and Governor Pritzker over in Illinois might well lend a sympathetic ear.
You probably have a lot of people that have moved here from Chicago that would be very upset, going, I got away from Illinois for that. No, to your point, there is the discussion that's been happening about this annexation of Illinois. Being as frank as possible, or as blunt as possible, I look at that as kind of just, it's a stunt. Ultimately, Illinois would have to acquiesce to the idea that they would cede territory. And I've heard them say the same thing, essentially, that Don proposed, which is, well, then we'll just take your coast. We'll swap you, and meaning us. I don't think anybody really necessarily wants to, to go and switch sides here on that. But either way, to me, it's kind of like one of these conversations that we're having that I'm going, can't we talk about something more substantive? Can we talk about housing or, utilities or something else? But yeah.
Recently, our former governor, Mitch Daniels, had a very good editorial coming out against this redistricting. Do you think he still has any sway over the more reasonable members of his party?
One, to your point, yes. Mitch Daniels did, former Governor Daniels did come out with a really disappointed statement. And I applaud him, because a lot of times, there's always political retribution for when you stand up against your own party, or when you stand up against kind of what's happening. And he has really stayed, to his credit, he's really kind of stayed out of out of the political spectrum for a little while. I mean, he's been in academia working at Purdue. And so I was surprised. I was honestly surprised to see him make such a statement. And I think that given the impact that it would have on somebody like me, I'm thinking people on the other side of the aisle, I'm hoping are having that same kind of moment where they're going, okay, that's a refresher. You know, that is kind of, you know, it's a reset, because when Mitch was in power, he was really in power in the state of Indiana. I mean, he really, you know, kind of really shaped what was happening, for whether, you know, for better or worse. He had a very, very powerful influence over this state. And my hope is that there are people that do remember, oh yeah, you know, that was Mitch, that was Governor Mitch. You know, he did a lot of things that I liked, and he did a lot of things that are, you know, put us in a better situation than we were then than we are now. And so maybe we should listen to him.
And if anything, it gives these senators that are on the fence support to go, you know, Mitch can do it, we can do it. So that's what I'm hoping for. So.
Governor Braun on Thursday made a statement that he recognized that the Senate did not have enough Republican votes to call the special session, but he made the implied threat that he might call a session anyway to force Republicans in the Senate or in the legislature to go on record both for or against. The implicit threat was that it would show the White House who supported the White House and who didn't. That certainly has to be a concern of Republicans about going on the record. And it looks like the governor is thinking about forcing their hand.
Yeah, that's
That's what's going to take.
so. If you guys didn't hear the what was your name? Ron. That's right. So Ron had pointed out an article that had come out where Governor Braun has essentially basically stated, you know, I acknowledge that the votes aren't there, but, you know, we could potentially still go in and, you know, if you're going to vote against Trump, you're going to vote against it on the board for the world to see. Because right now those discussions are all happening behind the scenes. That's a pressure cooker. I mean, let's be honest. We have seen a lot of influential conservative commentators. We have seen a lot of people, you know, these influencers online that have basically said, do what Trump says, or we're going to come to Indiana, we're going to vote you out, we're going to, you know, there was personal cell phones of senators that were posted online. I mean, that's damn near a threat. You know, that is, I believe, undue pressure at some of the highest levels. My hope is that backfires. I mean, my hope is that people go, okay, enough. Like, this is our state. Let us do our job. Like, let us, you know, follow it. I guess kind of really what that leads to is this how it's always going to be? Is this going to be every decision that we're going to make? Is this going to be, you know, we're just going to be taking orders from Washington? And really, my hope is that it appeals back to the memory of my conservative friends across the aisle. People that said, why do we care what Washington's doing? Washington is so screwed up. Washington's making all these bad decisions that are putting us in this situation. Why are we listening to Washington? We heard that for 4 years, the last 4 years. We heard it for the 8 years, you know, that preceded 2016. So, I mean, it's kind of like, what has changed? What has truly changed? Because I don't feel like we're in any better position. I mean, if you look at where we're at statistically, it's not great. So you guys have all kinds of questions. I love this. Thank you guys for coming.
I just have a quick question. You mentioned Mitch Daniels. Hi. Thank you. In 2010, Mitch Daniels signed at that time, the redistricting after the census. That was a part of Red Map that brought the number of competitive districts in Indiana down from 24 to 14 and pushed it solidly Republican. So other than Trump pushing this from Washington and this happening outside of the census year, what is the real difference between what they're trying to do in Indianapolis and Operation Red Map in 2010? Because to me, this just looks like another expedited Operation Red Map. I mean, I don't want to be overblown about it, but Texas doing this, and then North Carolina just did it, I think, this morning to get another seat. It just seems like I'm grateful to hear there are Republicans in our legislature that are talking against this, but there's a lot of me that doesn't really buy it.
So his question was about, and I'm a little bit familiar with Operation Red Map, which was essentially kind of a conservative think tank's push to really redraw state legislature, the lines on state legislatures, and that happens again with the census. In our state, it's in the Constitution. It's been interpreted that that's constitutionally you have to do it every 10 years, and they do that, only every 10 years. That's essentially the difference. Is that this is not that 10-year gap. So, to his point, Mitch Daniels and the Operation Red Map that kind of happened in 2010 after that census, where you had a serious redraw of the maps and really kind of drew out a lot of Democrats. His question is, what's the difference between that then versus this now? I think if you read what Mitch said in that article, it's you're changing. You can win without needing to do this, and you don't need to do this every 2 years. You don't need to do this outside of that 10-year census. There's a process for which this happens, and it should remain that process. One of the things that and just to kind of back up, one of the things that I consistently hear in the legislature, as you could probably assume, there's only 10 of us, so I'm on a lot of different committees. You'll probably see me, if you pay attention, you'll see me making a lot of different arguments in these committees. And a lot of times, it'll boil down to, we'll have a back and forth with somebody across the aisle, and we'll make our points, and, somebody might get frustrated with me, and they'll say, you know what, Senator Pohl, that's a great idea, but you know what, elections have consequences. So basically telling me, go find more Democrats to win, and then you can have your ideas, and we'll hear to those then. This flies in the face of that. I mean, this is essentially, to me, elections aren't going to have consequences. We're going to ensure that the elections are not going to have consequences. We're going to draw them so they don't. So that, to me, is, indicative of where we're at with this.
Absolutely.
Actually, if I could add to the end of what you're saying, the difference between 2010 and 2025 today is the Supreme Court.
That's
The
true.
Supreme Court used
That's
to
great
have a set of standards for drawing a map with equal representation and balanced representation of races, partisan, that kind of thing. And in the last 15 years, that's gone. We're even in front of the Supreme Court now might be the dismantling of the Voting Rights Act, which will get rid of minority representation as a consideration altogether. So 15 years ago when Mitch drew that map, he knew he had to have a map that would pass Supreme Court muster. That doesn't exist today.
So the brilliant Mike Gresham, school board member here in Michigan City, and it's a point that I appreciate you bringing up, is the Supreme Court, because that Voting Rights Act could have massive implications, because people have asked, what happens if they do change this? What happens if they do change the maps? What recourse do people have? And one of the things that has happened is, and has been challenged and done so successfully in different places, when they've redrawn the maps, not necessarily in the off census years, but when they've drawn them in the census years following the process, is sometimes they'll draw the maps so disproportionately that you'll take, for example, an African American community, Wisconsin. You take a inner city African American community and you split it so that they don't have a voice at all. And the Supreme Court's under the Voting Rights Act have said, okay, you guys, politically you want to draw your maps, understood, but you're drawing them now that you're taking away the votes based on race. I mean, you've divided a community up that now is just been so diluted. This is unconstitutional. You're doing this based on race. And so that is one of the, potentially one of the things that could happen in Indianapolis, arguably in Northwest Indiana, but more so in Indianapolis. And so that has been one of the challenges that could be posed, that the Supreme Court would essentially just take away that legal argument altogether.
It was in the history of my experience with the exposure to the independent redistricting topic, come across this notion, this mathematical notion of what's called voter efficiency. Is that the right term, Julie?
Efficiency gap.
Julie. It would be interesting to get a projection of voter efficiency in each of these newly proposed districts.
So explain that again, the voter efficiency.
Now you'll find that the voter efficiency is way down. And that, one of the things that does is suppress.
I don't know.
But Julie, why don't you explain this voter constituency motion?
Yeah, it's a concept that came before the Supreme Court in the Common Cause v. Ruscio case.
Okay.
It's actually developed by Nick Stephanopoulos over at the University of Chicago. It's a mathematical equation, as Don says. It's the concept of wasted votes, that you have such
Okay, yes.
lopsided districts.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
I'm wondering, are we going to keep mail-in ballots and are we going to keep early voting? Because I know that is a topic that I've heard about on the news.
One, thank you for paying attention, because that's one of the other issues is the idea of mail-in voting and the idea of early voting. So I knock a lot of doors in all the elections, whether it's if I'm running or if somebody else is running. A lot of times I'm just trying to get the vote out because I want people to be out there voting. I have, and when I knock on the door, I always ask the question, do you have a plan to vote? Are you going to vote early, or are you going to vote on election day? And oftentimes it's just to let people know, if you plan to vote early, here's the closest locations, or here's what your location is, if there's specific ones. And going back to 2020, I remember, following that election, you had a lot of people, if I knocked on a door and they maybe leaned a little bit more right, they didn't trust early voting. They felt like you would hear this, we're going, there's the stealing the vote, there's this, this conversation of things that President Trump had brought up and had been defeated in every single case that he brought up and tried to challenge, about, what was happening with early voting, and that was kind of one of the things that he was trumpeting about. There was a big change after that in 2024, and then in 2023 and 2024. A lot of people, I think, kind of realized that really wasn't all that much merit to it. And you saw early voting numbers really kept going up and up and up. This last session, there was a bill that was going to, at first, eliminate early voting. And then it was, okay, well, then we'll do it 7 days. All right, well, then we'll only allow it for 14 days. Okay, well, then we're going to cut it down to 21 days instead of 28, which it's currently at. It was indicative to me that you had people that were on the other side of the aisle saying, no, we like this. We don't want to wait in line. We love to vote. We don't want to wait in line all day on election day. I've got, people are working a lot more. They're working longer. A lot of people that were able to retire at 65 no longer can. So the idea that you have people that are paying attention, that do want to use their right to vote, are, they're going to be pissed. You're taking away my Saturday vote that I could have done 3 weeks earlier when I was on my way to Menards. Yeah, no, I don't like that. So I think that was very indicative of where we're at. However, you also have mail-in voting, which, if you look at the numbers, tends to be Democratic, and that is one of the things that is getting seriously attacked right now. Is the opportunity to try and eliminate that, and that is one of the things that we've heard out of the Trump administration. I think that there would be a serious legal attack on that, because I think is, regardless of race, regardless of party, regardless of anything else. This is something that has been, consistently. We have yet to see any demonstrations how it's somehow faulty, somehow it's inaccurate, somehow it's illegal. So the idea that you would be taking away the vote from veterans, from folks that are sick people that are elderly, people that have to work abroad, people that have to, do all kinds of things that take them away from the opportunity to vote in person, is very problematic to me. And I think that would be challenged. I would really truly hope that the Supreme Court, even though the makeup is the way that it is now, would be able to see the forest for the trees on that one. So, hope for it.
One of the costs of this whole debate is that we're not talking about substantive issues, but what's happening in the United. And that's a big cost.
Okay.
It's a hidden cost. I guess the question I would have is, how do you and others plan to bring those policy forward so that there's more discussion and debate about it?
That's a great question. So the question that was asked over here was, the more that we're talking about this thing that the majority of people don't want, is the less that we're talking about substantive issues that we are concerned about. Who here cares about data centers? Who here cares about utilities? Who cares about SEA 1? SEA 1 is actually one of the things that we've talked about, and if you're not familiar, SEA 1 was the property tax reform bill from this last year. That's one of the things that we've heard, folks. I've heard whispers of people saying, well, if you're going to drag us back down there, people that are in Republican districts that have been getting beat up I mean, they've been getting their butts kicked by every single school district, every single local government official, the police stations, the fire stations, the parks departments, libraries. They're all going, you just slashed our budgets without any replacement for it. And people are very upset. Very, very upset because even yesterday I'm sitting in my day job. I work as a litigator. I do a lot of work with schools, and I had a superintendent that told me, I've got you here for a minute. We're just sitting here on downtime. Let me pull out my budget and show you what's going to happen this next year. And we sat there and talked for about a half hour. And I mean, there's no answers that I can give her other than obviously this was not what I wanted. I never voted for this. I wouldn't vote for this. So what we're seeing right now is I think that there is going to be a push, and I think that potentially I could see that some of these folks that are holding out are simply saying like that's exactly the message. I don't have time for this. I can't go back to my district and say, hey, I took away your congressman in addition to taking away a lot of your tax dollars, and that there's a push to say if you're going to call us in, I'm going to push for this as well.
And there was talk earlier in the year that I heard from other legislators that there was going to be a special session to fix some of the things that in this bill that needed to be fixed because the library, schools, everything, county government. And here's coming from county government is what I'm telling you is whatever property tax relief you might see from that bill, you're going to pay more. And what the legislators are telling local governments, these are the tools we gave you to make up the gap. We did what we did, and you guys make up the gap now. Because you're going to wind up paying more than if they'd have just left it alone and what they did. That's my opinion. Earlier this year, I had a small group was brought together and they brought the governor in. And one of the first questions I asked him was, hey, in LaPorte County, we're going to be $2 million short in 27, $2 million short in 28, and $2 million short in 29. I said, how are we supposed to, keep providing the services we are? He looks at me, and I'm this far away from him. He looks at me and he goes, where'd you get those numbers? And I go, from the state from the legislature. He goes, it's the first time I'm hearing that. So, I mean, you talk about a disconnection from where reality is to what they're doing in this perception that it's saving the common person money on their property taxes when this is my understanding, 70% of the people might see $300. I mean, it's smoke and mirrors to get a bunch of other stuff in. So,
so your house has to be worth a good amount of money to get that $300 threshold. Most people will not hit $300. Most people are between 120 and 140, I believe, that they might see in property tax relief. But then they're telling the locals, jack up your lits, max out your lits, max out your wheel tax, figure out taxes that you can get at if you want it, go and find it. You can tell the folks there, and that you're jacking it up for us or not. They don't care. That's my issue on it. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I think, and I talked to Representative Pressel. I'm on the town council at Westville, and everybody is taking the hit. And I asked him, how can any of you people in Indianapolis not think ahead of any of the ramifications that you were doing? You were killing your constituents. You're hurting schools, you're hurting county government, police, fire, local government. If you really want to help the people of Indiana, instead of giving the benefit of a big tax break to the guy with a $4 million home, how about cutting the sales tax 2%? Cut it down to 5%. But no, because that's money coming out of his budget that he has to worry about. They don't care about what we have to suffer through here as long as they look good down there. Look what we did to property tax. Well, yeah.
So that's the thing, right? The property tax, the state doesn't keep any of the property tax. That all goes to local governments, schools, libraries, local governments. And the thing is their answer was, and this came straight from other legislators, we gave you the tools to fix it, the shortfalls. So we give you the lits, the wheel taxes, different things. But but the bill doesn't stop there. There's a sunset on the lits. So the lits we have in place are gonna expire, I think, in 28. So then you have to redo them. The public safety lit that the county passed unanimously, we moved around the county and got everybody's opinion on it. Everybody was behind it. That now sunsets, and they're taking the police out of that, which is a big portion. And a lot of these communities are paying, they're subsidizing their officers' pays with this. Now you got to find a different place to do that. And then another caveat, oh, wait a minute, that's not enough. We're going to make them pass it every year. So, I mean, it's just, I joke, and it's not a joke, but it's like, I'd love to have seen the chalkboard when they're sitting there coming up with this plan and going, hey, no, we're going to do this. No, wait, let's cut the list. No, wait, no, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this, and let's take schools out of that, and then we're going to make schools come for referendums only on major elections. I mean, the schools are the ones that are going to really get, I mean, just in LaPorte County, it's some meetings I've attended, almost every school's got a referendum that they got to come now.
If you're a public school, you're gonna get it hit.
Right. Big time. Right, big time. So.
Michigan City is looking at about 30% of operations
Right.
by 2030.
Right. And the county libraries,
Percent.
the county libraries are getting beat up. I mean, so it affects everybody.
The counties keep 80% of the lit, even if they pass it, they don't have to distribute it down.
Well, correct. And
Keep updating.
then if a town like Long Beach or Michiana Shores want to pass a lit, they got to come to the county council and get permission. So it's how they came up with, it just boggles my mind how it's not just a simple, hey, let's do this for this reason. It's hard to understand. And it's not, this is my opinion, for the sole purpose of going, we cut your property taxes. Look what we're doing for you, which is an absolute smoke and mirrors.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that I really truly appreciate about Randy is you were fire chief, right?
Yeah.
Where at?
Here,
In Michigan City. Well, how many people did you have on your staff at that point?
84.
84 people. So Randy's the perfect experience for this conversation. Somebody that's had to put together an actual budget and has had to make these calls, had to take a look at what has actually happened, or how to put how to figure out, to make the dollars make sense, how to figure out what we're going to end up doing. And right now, I can tell you, please be very, very patient and as understanding as possible with your local governments, because they are, all of them across the entire state are sitting there with their pencils and their erasers trying to figure this out. And it's a math problem that really can't be solved under the current structure. So, having somebody like Randy is, thank you, Randy, for stepping up. I will say that. I've worked in local government as well for 10 years, and I'm looking at some of my folks that are still in local government thinking it's a nightmare. It's absolutely a nightmare what's going to happen right now. I do want to make sure that we stay on topic with redistricting. If you guys want, I'm sure Randy and I will be able to find some time to continue to, we'll do another town hall just on SB1. Honestly, I mean, it's such, and we'll do one on that. We'll do one on utilities. It's another big topic.
And if you guys, you can sign up for newsletters if you want to get notifications or something. We do have a paper up here you can put your name on if you're not already getting it. So
yeah, to that point, one, please don't be shy. If you come and get donuts and coffee still as well. There is a sign up sheet that we have over here in the corner, and there's other information there as well. I know that we're getting a little bit closer to the to the end up here, and what I want to make sure is that one, that you guys know that there is that sheet. There's also more information up there as well. So if you start to trickle out or start to sneak out, if you feel like that you want some of the resources sheets that we have that provide a ton of information about what the different states, the different offices in the state, and then also the Indiana, I believe it's the economic development. The economic development folks put together a magazine. It's not necessarily the thing I asked for, but they have all these boxes of these magazines that were sitting there, and I'm going, taxpayers paid for those. I'm going to just start gathering those up and bringing them back. So there's some of those magazines over there. There's like the Indiana focused, Indiana tourism stuff. as somebody, as a place up here that has a lot of interest in tourism, please feel free to take one of those magazines and see, what all Indiana's talking about your area. I did see a hand. Oh, there he is up there. There he is.
Getting back to redistricting, about 20 minutes ago, the gentleman had asked about the governor calling everybody back just to show who's with this and who's without it. I'm Paul Hammer, a constituent of the region in Michiana. I know when we vote, it's only the or we do a secret ballot. Nobody knows actually who we voted for. In the primary, they might know who, which party you select for the primary. But in the state legislatures, they don't have secret ballots, do they?
No. On this particular issue, it's a legislative motion that would happen, a bill essentially that would happen. So when they vote, they will put their votes. We will put our votes up on the board.
It's recorded.
Yeah, it's all recorded. It's in the, it's in the records forever.
And they never do secret ballots.
Not for legislative motions. No, they may, if they're taking the temperature in the room right now. That I can't say what's happening in their caucus. Their discussions would be private, but the ultimate decision when we vote on whether or not we're going to redistrict, that will happen in public, in the most public way possible.
I encourage, if you're wondering what you can do, vote. I encourage everybody to vote. I don't ask what party they're from. I've actually worked for both parties, and depending where you live, Michigan City is primarily Democratic, LaPorte and Long Beach are primarily Republican. It's hard to get Republicans to run for office in Michigan City, and vice versa. It's hard to get Democrats to run in the city of LaPorte and Long Beach. So sometimes you have to, when you go to primary, you pick a party because your only choices are in that party. And somebody mentioned punch 10. Every county's different. In LaPorte County, there's machines and there's no punch 10. It's like, in the primary, you got to pick one of the parties. But if you do pick a party, it'll pre-mark them, but there's still non-political things like school board and stuff.
School board's no longer nonpartisan, unfortunately, as of this last year.
At-large positions were the ones that you had to go down and pick 3 of.
But then referendums, what about judges? Are they non-political?
No, those are political.
Okay,
yeah.
But referendums, you might still, even though you punch a party and it pre-marks them, you need to go through next to get the referendums.
Yep.
Even though it pre-marks them, if there's a bad apple, as you go through, you can uncheck mark that individual. Or even though you do a straight party, you can uncheck mark somebody. You can check it again and put them back on, but you can put on somebody else from another party. So I'm just telling everybody, make sure you get out and vote. And what's punch 10? Is that when they had card punches?
Back in the 90s.
Yeah, that was.
Well,
history data.
It was as recent as when I ran the first time I came on the council in 2014. They had punch 10 then, and I did, and I had people going, "Oh, you need to push that." I absolutely despise that. I think it's terrible because you're sweeping in. I don't care if you're an R or D. You're bringing in people that let's put it this way, aren't the best choice for the people. I guess that's the nicer way to put it than what I was going to say. Because, we see that now, if you're in the county, there's some issues with some people that, get swept in with it. Because, you're bringing in the good with the bad. And And there are good people on both sides, and I'd love to see us get back to the good Republicans and the good Democrats, and we can sit down and talk and get things done, and eliminate the hard right and the hard left, and get back to the center where I think we used to be when we did. I was raised in a Republican household, so when I was on the town board in Michiana Shores back in the 90s, my first thing I was a Republican, because everybody was a Republican out there. And when I came to work for the city, then I switched over to the Democrat, and I became a union member. So between my wife and I, we had over 60 years in the union paying dues. So I believe in things on both sides. I don't want to get into political, but
I'm a science, numbers, physics, math, statistics guy, so I'm all for ranked voting.
Yeah.
But it needs to be explained and simplified to people. But here again, vote, and if you're in a community where the only choices are the opposite party, you're sort of voting for your second choice. But if you voted for the person running, for your party isn't going to win in your community, you can still vote for your second choice in that community.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up, I forgot to ask this. Does anybody work in Whitley County? Whitney? Does anybody have family members in Whitley County?
Where is Whitman County?
Thank you. Thank you. That's my point. Whitley County, the county here in Indiana. If in many of the maps that I've seen drawn, the way that they would draw it, you would see the Lake County line. That would be essentially District 1, and that would go all the way down to Lafayette. This big long, that would be one District 1 down here. District 2, or the second district, it would go down to Porter County about a little bit less than halfway, and cut across the county, come a little bit down, get a little bit of the South Valpo, and then go clear all the way out to where Whitley County is. Over here. This would be District 2. So ultimately, people that would be in, for example, Portage and Hobart. A lot of times if you've driven through Portage and Hobart, you don't know when you're in Portage, when you're in Hobart. You talk to those people, they go to the same churches, they work in the same place, they have a sense of community. A lot of them, their family members live right across the street. But that is one district, that would get cut in half, and half of those people would be voting for the same people that would be voting on the east side of Whitley County, Indiana. Most people would have no clue. Some people didn't know there was a Whitley County at all. They know where Hobart is. They know where these places are, that they have a sense of community. But that's essentially what we're talking about. I mean, it's not we're just going to kind of, fudge with the maps a little bit. It is a drastic change in way these maps are drawn. And I mean, you tell me, right now, Congressman Mervan has this area to make up for. I've been to events in Lake County where, I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, well, I got 2 or 3 events to go to today. I, started off in maybe Maryville at a, grand opening of something, then I came over to Chesterton for something, and then I was over here in Michigan City, or even maybe in LaPorte. Congressman Mervan was at every one of those events, and then he had 2 more on top of that. I mean, I'll say this, I feel that anybody that would represent this area would do so because it's manageable. You're going to have a congressman that is going to be somebody who can actually be accessible. They're going to be in your county. They're going to be at your events. They're going to be talking to you. You have a congressman that's now got to cover all of that. How often do you think you're going to see that person? It's impossible. Right. It's impossible.
Where the people gave us money.
It's exactly. I mean, they'll probably just stay in D.C. What's the point? It's too big of a place. I mean, I don't mean to be facetious. I really don't. But I mean, I think just thinking about this from a logical standpoint of, we have these things that are cut in a way that people can represent. It is possible that you can be at these events and that you can actually be in your community when you are home from D.C.
Unfortunately, common sense and logic doesn't play into what they're looking to do. So,
for access to Fourth County, for people to watch this later, you need to be standing by the mic.
Sorry. Oh, I apologize. Yeah, I should have got one of the handheld mics, but yeah. I want to make sure that we get all of your guys' questions in. I mean, Nancy.
It's not really a question, but since Prop 20 in California is, Prop 50 in California is so important and could impact what happens here, they are looking for people to call from anywhere. You don't need to be living in California. There's a number, I don't have the number on me, but you can look it up. They're looking for people just to call, get out the vote. Make sure you get out and vote. So if you have time, you need to call our governor about our redistricting, but you can also call for California.
Yeah. Okay. We got more questions? Oh, yeah.
I'd just like to reemphasize for the group, after years of hearing the mantras of state control and local control and all those things, to have the President of the United States now trying to lean on us to change our states' rights and our local control with these kind of discussions. Realize historically, as these maps were drawn, there had to be consideration given to equitable representation, meaning in an approximately 60-40 state, representation should be approximately 60-40. And historically, these cases, if it was an 80-20 instead of a 60-40, people could take that to the court system and they would go through the court system and the Supreme Court would say, no, historically, you should be represented by groups of people who think, act, and live like you do. And this map, where there's literally zero representation for 40% of the state, is not it. And it isn't just Indiana, but the fact that we're having this discussion, not only of a 100-0 map, but that we're having it in 2025 instead of 2020 and 2030. There are so many historic norms that are just being thrown out the window here. The history of the court system, the history of redistricting, the history of representation, all gone. None of this is normal. None of this is historically accepted. We have never done this before. So as these discussions happen, do not let this be normalized. This is not normal. This is not representative. Thank you.
It's a great point, Mike. I mean, you're absolutely right. The idea of that representation is really, you'll be able to see it. Whenever these maps are done, they're going to have to be drawn in a way to disenfranchise 40% of the people. That's not going to be something that you could just see pretty easily done and look at it and go, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, these districts are going to look wild. And I mean, here's the other thing too. It's a lot of times you'll hear, there's a lot of Illinois bashing that goes on in this state. A lot of people will say, well, Illinois this, Illinois that. And now it's, well, we want to do this because they're doing this, or we want to do this because California is doing this, and it flies in the face of what Hoosier values truly are. I mean, we truly, it is one of these things where, to take away that many people's voice and to split communities in this way, I don't see us getting to a point where we're getting back to where all of you earlier, when I said where the extremes are taking out all the oxygen out of the room, I feel like this is pushing us even further. And that to me is by design. And it's up to us to make that change. It really, truly is. Any other questions?
If nobody else has them, I would like to ask you.
Sure.
Earlier I mentioned in 2010, the Republicans went forward with Operation Red Map to try and gain seats in the legislature in both the House and the Senate. And you've since seen in the last 15 years they've just completely gained dominance in both chambers to the point where the Democrats can't even break caucus. So my question is less a question for you as an unbiased senator and more for you as a Democrat in Indiana. What do we have to look forward to as citizens for the Democratic Party in terms of what is your strategy going to be to adapt to the reality that we live in now, where we have these districts that, whether or not we like it, they're most likely, if trends continue in the way that they've gone, going to go this route. what are we gonna do to adapt to the population in the state to have a fighting chance to ever take back the House or the Senate?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think honestly, I mean, the simple fact that this is happening right now, I think is indicative of the fact that I truly think that the administration's power and their influence is really starting to get hollowed out. Because it's if you have somebody that's saying I can't win elections, despite we just heard oh well is a landslide victory with 50.03% the popular vote. Not a landslide victory by any means, but the idea that not even months into the administration we're talking about well we have to rig the next election. And I can tell you who you should talk to. You should talk to the farmers out there right now. You should talk to the farmers out there right now. They are pissed. Go to a Farm Bureau meeting. I'm serious. You're seeing people that, in large part voted for this administration that are sitting there going, we're getting screwed. Not only are the tariffs killing us, but we're giving $40 billion away to a competitor for the soy market who's just sold all of their stock to China, which was used to be one of our customers. So not only are you taking my tax dollars and giving it away, that person's also taking my entire, my customer base. Talk to folks in rural Indiana and the rest of the place, and the rest of the country where they're sitting there going, we are going to potentially lose our rural hospital, our one rural hospital. If I've got to go to the hospital right now, it's 30 miles down the road. If that one gets closed, I've got to go 150 miles to the 120 miles to the next hospital.
Trump says we should buy Argentinian beef now instead of
So I mean,
it's insane.
Well, this is again. Why do you think he's trying to draw the maps? I mean, he knows that I truly feel like these policies are failing. Tariffs are hurting. People, job for the first time in forever, you're seeing the job market go belly up. I mean, it's been going up and up and up, and now it's going belly up, essentially. I mean, the writing is on the wall, and that's why this is happening. And I think that is truly indicative of the fact that, the tides they're gonna have to turn. People just are not going to be able to continue to be shoveled this stuff and say, yes, sir, may I have another?
I wanted to say to you, to both of you, I'm Gloria and Tony, thank you so much for coming out and having a town hall meeting, because we don't get that over in South Bend, from what I understand, in that distancing, and this has been so informational. This place could be standing in the moon.
Thank you. We did this a couple weeks ago in Portage, and it's packed. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about this, and that was, across the political spectrum, and thank you guys for being incredibly respectful. Thank you guys, it's you always. I love town halls. I really, really, truly do. It's definitely one of these places where I want people to feel connected, because right now, when you see things, when we're having discussions about redrawing maps so people's voices don't feel, they're not heard, what does that do to your morale? People just go, well, who cares? The whole system's rigged. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and you're essentially diluting your power. And that's again why I said it feels like it's by design. Martha.
Hi, my name is Martha Moss, and I'm also a Democratic precinct person. And Rodney can tell you, I've been out walking with him and his mom when they were running, because I liked Rodney. I thought he would do a good job. I've been canvassing with him. So what I want, I guess and I'm doing everything I can to call these folks on the list, and sending postcards, doing every direction I can to hit them up and tell them how I feel. But the other thing I can't remember who said it, but it was a Republican that said it. They said, beware of the redistricting, because it could have unintended consequences. So I'm going to tell you, and I would definitely be divided. I would be off into the 2nd district where I was before. But I can tell you, in those days, we won with Joe Donnelly. So I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to give up hope. I mean, if they do redistrict, I'm not going to give up hope that we can't find somebody who can support my values, and that I'm going to work hard for them. So I'm going to do that. I'm in.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Martha. I mean, really, that is, we need that. We need people to not lose sight, not lose strength, not lose hope. I mean, at that point, you've lost everything. And I really, truly think that being able to stay connected and stay involved is going to be absolutely critical going forward. So, I haven't heard from you in the back, in the black sweatshirt.
I was curious what the steps would be to take for Indiana to become independent redistricting, like Michigan and California.
So earlier I'd mentioned, it's the federal government leaves it up to the states how they draw their lines. The legislature would make that determination as to who, how they do it, and sometimes they keep that power as they have here in the state of Indiana. Other times, their constitution may call for it as well. There is some set of rules, whether it's the legislature or the Constitution, that dictates how those congressional maps will be drawn. It would take in our state. It would take a legislative action, a bill being passed that said, okay, we're not going to draw on maps anymore. We're going to leave this up to some places have the judiciary that does it. The Supreme Court or whatever the court office there does it. Some have an independent commission. That would essentially be up to the legislature at this point. Unfortunately, in this state, because of our Constitution, we don't have ballot initiatives. Some places have taken control of that through ballot initiatives, where they said, okay, we're going to put this on the ballot. You guys decide, and it's been for a number of different issues. Some of the topics that have gone that way. The reproductive rights, abortion. That has been one of the things that the legislature acted, and in certain states, they had passed a ballot initiative to undo what the legislature had done in the abolishing access to abortion care. So I mean, it is one of those things that, unfortunately, in our state, we just don't have the ability to, because of our Constitution, to pass initiatives by ballot. So it's up to the powers that be in the legislature to do that.
Follow up for that. There's no chance of getting a change in the Constitution for ballot measures or?
Yeah.
I figured, but I mean, and moving forward in the future, if things were to change, could that be something that?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, it would absolutely be one of those things that if there were, 50-50 in the House, 50-50 in the Senate, I think that you would see a lot more action on that, where people would say, okay, you know what, this is like much more likely to happen. We see constitutional amendments that are proposed, some of which are on their way. We'll be back to explain that process very quickly. The legislature can do constitutional amendments, but it has to pass two different sessions in both the House and the Senate. So, for example, there's one that's being proposed on bail, on how people could, whether or not people can be held without bail indefinitely. Right now, that can only be done in our state for murder and for treason. And so there is a movement right now, and it's passed one legislative session and has to come back and pass another one after an election. But then that would go to the ballot, and then you guys would all determine whether or not we were going to change the way that we do bail in this state. So, for example, if you were arrested for stealing a car, a judge can make a determination right now as to your bail is going to be set at X amount. If the judge says, you know what, you're pretty scary and you got a pretty bad history, they can't hold you indefinitely. If you commit murder, they could. If you were up for treason, they could. But given the fact that you don't, you didn't commit either of those crimes, they would have to release you on some amount of bail.
Kidnapping.
Yeah. So.
Is in the news right now.
So yeah, kidnapping, human trafficking. The judge can make the determination if this bill were to pass and the Constitution were changed to said, the judge can hold you for these, for any reason. Essentially, you could be held until your trial. Indefinitely, I should say, indefinitely until your trial for essentially almost any crime. And that's kind of what the original bill that was proposed was. It'll come back again. I have a feeling that it's going to be changed a little bit more. But just as an example, it's not as easy as just, we can change the Constitution like that. It is a arduous process for which actually you do get a vote on that. That would be one of the things that, you would actually go to the ballot and make that determination. I think the last time we amended the Constitution by the tax caps was in 2010 or something like that. So it's not an easy process, but it is possible.
Do you want to know how it happened in Michigan. You've seen films, documentary, it's a wonderful film called Slave Dragon. And it's about how that effort was, how it was accomplished in Michigan. And it was a young woman who said, this is not right. Slave Dragon, it's a 2020 documentary. I think you can see it on Netflix. Anybody who's interested, it's a great film.
I didn't realize we were over time, but I'm still, if you guys, anybody got any final questions? All right. All right.
Here's the thing, if anybody has any other questions and needs help with something, I don't have all the answers, but by God, I work hard to get it. But my phone number is, it's out there. I've been on the county council, I'm in real estate. If you Google Randy Novak, you're gonna see my cell number. It's the only number I got. So, but feel free to reach out, and kudos to Rodney for everything he did. So, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for fighting for us.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
What's your name?
Mike Vincent.
Vincent?
Yep.
Vincent.
Yep, I'm here in Michigan.
All my life.
Nice, very nice.
I retired, and then I thought I'd like to get involved in some city government, but